My girlfriend said, "Your best friend makes me uncomfortable. It's him or me." My best friend had been paralyzed in an accident, and I was his primary caregiver. I said, "I understand your feelings." Then I chose him, moved into his guest room to help full-time, and blocked her number. When she showed up at his house, demanding to talk. Original post. I, 29 male, have known my best friend since the 3rd grade. That's 21 years. Longer than most marriages last in this country, and honestly, probably more stable than most of them too. We grew up 3 houses apart, played on the same baseball team for 6 years, got our driver's licenses the same week, and were each other's best man at, well, he was supposed to be mine. That part didn't happen. I'll get to that. Last April, my best friend was in a car accident. A delivery truck ran a red light, doing about 45, and hit his driver's side door. He spent 11 days in the ICU. When he woke up, he couldn't feel his legs. T10 spinal cord injury. The doctor said it was incomplete, which sounds hopeful until you realize it mostly just means we don't know how much you'll get back, if anything. He was 29 years old and learning how to use a wheelchair before he even got discharged. He doesn't have a lot of family. His mom passed when we were in high school. His dad remarried and moved overseas. They talk maybe twice a year. He got a half-sister he's met 4 times. So when the hospital asked about his care plan and who'd be helping with his transition home, I was the one sitting in that meeting. Not because nobody else was available. Because there was nobody else. Period. I was already helping him 3 or 4 days a week after work, driving him to physical therapy, helping him with transfers, meal prepping, handling his insurance appeals, because those people will deny a wheelchair cushion like it's a yacht purchase. It was a lot, but it's my best friend. You just do it. My girlfriend and I had been dating for about 14 months at that point. Things were good. She was fun, smart, attractive. We talked loosely about moving in together by the end of the year. Nothing locked in, just conversations. But after the accident, my schedule shifted hard toward caregiving, and she started getting antsy. At first it was small. "You're going over there again tonight?" Or, "Can't his insurance cover a nurse for that?" It became more pointed. "I feel like I'm dating his calendar." I try to balance it. I really did. I'd schedule date nights, make sure I wasn't canceling on her constantly. But some weeks were rougher than others. My buddy had a pressure sore that got infected in August, and I was over there every day for 2 weeks managing wound care and driving him to follow-ups. She hit her limit in early October. We were sitting in her apartment eating takeout, and she put her chopsticks down and said, "We need to talk about him." "Okay, what about him?" "He makes me uncomfortable. The whole situation makes me uncomfortable. I feel like I'm competing with a grown man for my boyfriend's time, and I'm losing. He's paralyzed. He's not competing with you. He needs help. He needs a professional caregiver. Not you. You're not a nurse. He can't afford full-time care. His insurance covers 12 hours a week of home health. That's it. That's not your problem." I remember putting my food down. I remember thinking very carefully about what I was about to say because I knew once I said it, the conversation was going one direction only. It is my problem because he's my best friend, and I'm not going to abandon him because it's inconvenient for my dating life. She stared at me. Then she said the thing. "It's him or me. I'm serious. I can't keep doing this. Choose." I said, "I understand your feelings." She waited. I think she expected more. An apology, maybe. A negotiation. Some version of, let's find a middle ground. Instead, I said, "I hope you find someone who gives you what you need. But I'm not going to stop taking care of him." She blinked. "Are you breaking up with me right now? You gave me an ultimatum. I made a choice. Over me. You're choosing him over me. You asked me to pick. I picked." She stood up, grabbed her purse, and said, "You're going to regret this. I promise you that." She left. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, eating cold pad thai and feeling strangely calm. Like that hollow kind of calm where the big emotions haven't arrived yet, but you know they're in the mail. The next day, I blocked her number. Not out of anger. I just knew from experience. A college ex taught me this. That if you leave the channel open, you end up in a 6-week text war that drains your soul. Clean cut. Done. A week later, I moved into my best friend's guest room. He had a 3-bedroom ranch-style place with a ramp already installed, and I'd been spending so much time there it just made logical sense. I kept paying my share of rent at my apartment until the lease ended in December, which hurt financially, but I wasn't going to screw my roommate over. My buddy looked at me when I carried in my second duffel bag and said, "You really dumped your girl and moved in with a dude in a wheelchair. People are going to talk." I said, "Let him. You got ESPN." He did. We watched football. It felt right. Update 1. So I expected the breakup to be the end of it. I genuinely thought she'd move on, find a guy who had more free time, and that would be that. I underestimated how personally she took the rejection. My mistake. First wave hit through mutual friends. She started telling people I'd been emotionally cheating on her with my best friend. Not in a romantic sense. She was saying I had an unhealthy codependent attachment and that I'd chosen a man over my own relationship because I have savior complex issues. That language felt very specifically coached, like she'd been talking to someone who gave her the vocabulary to make it sound clinical instead of petty. A couple of friends reached out. My college buddy texted me, "Yo, your ex is telling people you have a pathological need to rescue people, and it's why you can't maintain adult relationships. Just FYI. I said, "Cool. Is she diagnosing everyone or just me?" "Him, just you." She diagnosed me as an enabler last week, though. Some people bought it. Not gonna lie. A few mutual friends went quiet on me. Stopped texting, stopped inviting me to things. It stung. But I was too busy managing my buddy's PT schedule and fighting with his insurance company about wheelchair repairs to really sit in that. Second wave. She showed up at the house. 2 weeks after the breakup. Saturday morning. I was making breakfast, scrambled eggs, nothing fancy, and I hear the doorbell. I open it and there she is. Full makeup. Nice outfit. She'd clearly planned this like it was a presentation. "We need to talk." "We really don't. You owe me a conversation. You blocked me and disappeared. That's not how adults handle things. You gave me an ultimatum about my paralyzed best friend. I think we handled it pretty clearly." She tried to step inside. I didn't move from the doorway. She looked past me into the hall. "Is he here?" "He lives here." "So yeah, I want to talk to him too. He needs to understand what he's doing to your life." My buddy wheeled himself into the hallway behind me. He'd heard the whole thing. He looked at her and said, deadpan, "Hey, I'd stand up to greet you, but you know." Then he gestured at the wheelchair. She turned red. Not from embarrassment, from fury. She looked at me and said, "You two think this is funny? You're throwing away a real relationship to play house with your buddy, and you think that's normal. I think you need to leave." "I'm not leaving until—" "Yes, you are. This isn't your house. I'm asking you to go. If you don't, I'll call the police and report someone trespassing." She stared at me for a long 3 seconds. Then she said, "You're going to end up alone. And when he doesn't need you anymore, you'll realize you gave up everything for someone who's just going to move on." She left, peeled out of the driveway. My buddy looked at me and said, "Dude, I'm sorry. Don't be. Eggs are ready." We ate breakfast and didn't talk about it. But she wasn't done. The next week, she contacted my mother. My mother. She called her and told her she was concerned about me. She said I was isolating myself and sacrificing my future, and that someone needed to intervene. She actually used the word intervene, like I was on drugs or something. My mom called me that night. She was confused, not angry. She asked me what was going on. I explained the whole situation, the ultimatum, the breakup, the showing up at the house. My mom was quiet for a minute and then said, "She called me to report that you're taking care of your injured best friend like that's a problem? Baby, that's the thing I'm most proud of you for." That one hit me. I'm not going to lie. I sat on the edge of the guest bed after I hung up and just breathed for a while. Because sometimes when you're in the middle of it, the caregiving, the exhaustion, the judgment, you forget that what you're doing is actually good. You start wondering if maybe you're broken in some way that makes you choose obligation over romance. And then your mom calls and reminds you that loyalty isn't a mental illness. Then my ex tried something that really ticked me off. She reached out to my buddy's half-sister, found her on social media somehow, and told her that I was taking advantage of my best friend's disability by living in his house rent-free and controlling his care. She positioned herself as concerned. The half-sister, who barely knows my buddy, called him asking uncomfortable questions about our living arrangement. She wanted to know if I was on his bank accounts. if I had access to his medications, if he felt safe. My buddy handled it with more patience than I would have. He told his half-sister, he's my best friend. He moved in to help me get dressed in the morning and make sure I don't get a blood clot and die. He pays half the groceries and the electric bill. If you want to come help instead, the guest room is available after he moves out. No. Okay then. She didn't call back. Update 2. Y'all, I really thought the half-sister thing was the bottom of the barrel. But entitled people are like archaeologists of their own audacity. They just keep digging. So here's what went down. About 3 weeks after the doorstep incident, I found out through a mutual friend that my ex had been telling a specific story to basically anyone who'd listen. The story was that I had moved into my buddy's house because I was financially struggling and was using his disability to get free housing. She told people I had quit contributing to bills at my old apartment. A lie. I paid every cent through December, and that I was draining my best friend's disability settlement. Let me be real clear about this. My buddy got a settlement from the accident. It wasn't life-changing money, but it covered his medical debt, his home modifications, and gave him a cushion. I have never seen $1 of it. I don't even know exactly how much it was because it's none of my business. He has his own financial advisor handling it. But she was out here telling people I had access to his money and was freeloading off a paralyzed man. That accusation made it to a guy I'd done some freelance work for. He texted me asking if everything was okay at home in a way that made it clear he'd heard something. I had to sit down and explain the situation to a professional contact to protect my reputation. That's when it stopped being annoying and started being something I needed to address. I didn't confront her. Instead, I did something she never expected because people like her operate on the assumption that you'll always engage. I went silent. Completely. I told my friends the truth once, calmly, in a group chat. I laid out the timeline. Accident in April. Caregiving started immediately. She gave an ultimatum in October. I chose my friend. She's been on a campaign since. I said I wasn't going to keep defending myself against a new accusation every week, and that anyone who believed her version without asking me first wasn't someone I needed in my life. Then I said nothing else about it. To anyone. For weeks. What I did instead was build a paper trail. Every text she'd sent before I blocked her saved. The messages from the mutual friend documenting what she was saying, screenshotted. The text from my freelance contact, saved. The call to my mother. My mom wrote down what was said and when. The contact with my buddy's half-sister, documented. My buddy wrote a simple statement saying I was there voluntarily, that he'd invited me to live with him, and that I had no access to his finances. He signed and dated it. His financial advisor provided a letter confirming I was not listed on any accounts. I didn't do any of this to sue her. I did it because I'd learned something from watching my buddy fight his insurance company for months. Documentation is the only language that institutions understand, and I had a feeling I was going to need it. I was right. Early December, a social worker showed up at my buddy's house. Unannounced. She was professional, polite, and clearly uncomfortable. She said someone had filed a concern about a vulnerable adult in the household, and she was there to do a welfare check. She needed to speak with my best friend alone. I stepped outside, sat on the front porch in the cold for 45 minutes. I knew exactly who had filed it. And I knew that this was designed to humiliate me and destabilize my buddy's care situation. My buddy told me later what the social worker asked. Was he being coerced? Did he have autonomy over his medical care? Was anyone accessing his finances without permission? Did he feel safe? He answered everything honestly. He showed her the letter from his financial advisor. He showed her his PT schedule, his medication list that he managed himself on a pill organizer app, his insurance paperwork. He told her, my best friend gave up his apartment and his girlfriend to help me learn how to live in this chair. The person who filed this complaint is the girlfriend who couldn't handle that. The social worker closed the case that day. She told my buddy, and he told me, that the complaint was vague and clearly motivated by personal conflict, not genuine concern. She said it happens more than you'd think. Here's what happened next. And this is the part 1 debated posting because it might sound petty, but I promise you it was purely practical. I went to a lawyer, not a big expensive one. A guy who does consultations for $150 an hour and primarily handles harassment and protective order cases. I showed him everything. The showing up at the house, the contacting my mother, the contacting the half-sister, the false financial accusations that reached a professional contact, the fraudulent welfare check filing. He said, "You have enough for a cease and desist. And honestly, if she continues after that, you'd have grounds for a protective order in most courts." He drafted a cease and desist letter. Very formal, very specific. It listed each incident with dates. It stated that any further contact, direct or through third parties, with me, my best friend, or our family members would be considered harassment and would result in legal action. It referenced the false welfare check filing specifically and noted that filing false reports against vulnerable adults can carry its own legal consequences depending on jurisdiction. The letter was sent certified mail. She signed for it on a Tuesday. She did not contact me, my buddy, my mom, or anyone else after that. Not once. Not a text through a friend, not a social media comment, nothing. The cease and desist worked the way it's supposed to. It made the situation real in a way that emotional arguments never could. Suddenly, this wasn't a breakup she could narrate her way through. It was a legal document with her name on it. The mutual friends who'd gone quiet started coming back around. Not all of them. Some were gone for good, and honestly, I was okay with that. The ones who came back didn't apologize. They just started texting again like nothing happened. I let them. I didn't need a grand reckoning. I needed people to stop treating me like a villain for taking care of my friend. My freelance contact, he apologized directly. Said he should have asked me before assuming. I told him no hard feelings and we moved on. We're still working together. Update 3. Final. All right, last one. I know a lot of you have been asking how things shook out long-term, so here it is. My buddy started a new round of intensive physical therapy in January. 3 days a week, 2 hours a session. His therapist is cautiously optimistic about some nerve recovery in his left leg. He's getting sensation back in patches, which apparently is a really good sign for an incomplete injury. He's not walking. The therapist didn't promise that. But he's getting stronger in his upper body. His transfers are getting smoother, and he's starting to talk about adaptive sports. There's a wheelchair basketball league about 30 minutes from us, and he's been watching their videos on YouTube like it's game film. I'm still living in the guest room. We have a system now that works. I handle mornings, help him with his routine, make breakfast, drive him to PT on the days it lines up with my schedule. A home health aide covers the days I can't be there. His insurance finally approved more hours after I helped him file a third appeal with a 6-page letter that cited their own policy language back at them. Whoever said insurance companies are the real final boss was absolutely right. I started seeing someone new. She's a respiratory therapist at the hospital where my buddy does his PT. She saw me in a waiting room enough times that she finally said, "You're either the most dedicated friend alive or you're stalking someone in this building." I said, "Can it be both?" She laughed. We got coffee. We've been on 4 dates. She knows the whole situation, the caregiving, the X, the cease and desist, and her exact response was, "So you're loyal and you have a lawyer." That's honestly ideal. I like her. She met my buddy on the 3rd date. He looked at her, looked at me, and said, "Massive upgrade." She laughed so hard she snorted. They get along. She doesn't compete with him for my time. She helps with his exercises sometimes when she's over because she literally went to school for this stuff. It's easy, in a way my last relationship never was. As for my ex, I know bits and pieces through the grapevine, and I'm going to be honest about this. I don't feel good about where she ended up, and I don't feel bad either. I just feel nothing. From what I heard, the fallout from her behavior wasn't just with me. The welfare check stunt apparently got back to some people in her wider social circle, because the mutual friend she'd been using as her main megaphone finally got the full story and was not happy about being used as a PR tool. That friend group fractured. She lost a few close friends over it. Not because of the breakup itself, but because of how she handled it afterward. Turns out people can forgive you for being upset about a breakup. They have a harder time forgiving you for filing false reports about a disabled man to punish your ex. She also had some professional blowback. I don't know the details and I don't want to speculate, but I heard she left her job around the same time everything went down. Whether that was related or just timing, I genuinely don't know. I'm not going to claim credit for something I can't confirm. I didn't know she tried to reach out one more time. Not to me. To my buddy. She sent him a DM on Instagram about 2 months after the cease and desist. It said something like, "I never had a problem with you. I just wanted my relationship to be a priority. I hope you're recovering well." My buddy showed it to me and asked if he should respond. I said that was his call. He read it again, said, "She literally tried to get a social worker to investigate you for taking care of me," and deleted it. Didn't block her, just deleted it and moved on to showing me a highlight reel of the wheelchair basketball team. Look, I know a lot of people reading this want some big moment where she realizes what she did, breaks down, and apologizes. That's not this story. People who file false welfare checks on paralyzed men because they're angry at their ex-boyfriend don't usually have epiphanies. They just move on to the next situation where they need to be the center of everything. I don't hate her. Hate requires energy I'd rather spend on other things. Like helping my buddy figure out how to cook from his wheelchair. We rigged up a lower countertop section with some plywood and adjustable legs, and it looks terrible, but it works. Or like learning that insurance appeals are basically a creative writing genre. Or like watching my best friend throw a basketball from his chair for the first time and hit nothing but net and yell "paralyzed," not dead so loud the neighbors probably heard. The thing nobody tells you about caregiving is that it changes you, not in the inspirational poster way, in the way where you get really good at reading someone's face to know if they're in pain, where you learn that a 3 a.m. leg spasm is just a Tuesday, where you stop caring about what people think of your choices because your choices are keeping someone alive and everything else is background noise. She wanted me to choose. I chose, and I'd choose the same thing again tomorrow. That's it. Thanks for following along. Be good to your people.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. So you would be doing what the couples part of what the couples in the intervention did. The couples in the intervention also were infertile. And so we're not going to touch your fertility question, but the men collected sperm, and we can do that if you want, but I don't think you may not want to talk about that on your but that's what we did in the intervention. So in the intervention we found, this is what the intervention was. There's a company called Fellow, which is grown out of UCSF. And they're very big now. I think they have like 200,000 men in their files who have had their semen tested. Okay? And at the time they have their semen tested, they're asked, could we recontact you for research? That's one important question. And they're asked, why did you want your sperm tested? And if they say, because we're infertile or subfertile, or we're worrying about our fertility, they ask, how long has it been that you've been having this problem with fertility? And if it's more than 12 months, then they're technically infertile, right? So if they said they would agree to be recontacted and they were infertile, they were potentially eligible for this intervention. You with me?
Got it.
So actually finding the couples that are in the film was a long process. They had to, of course, agree to be filmed. They had to have what we call, terrible word, idiopathic infertility, no known causes. So they couldn't be obese, they couldn't be smokers, they couldn't have a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis that explains. We don't want it to be unexplained.
Got it.
Okay? So sort of we winnowed down to what was 6 couples. One of them dropped out for personal reasons, so I won't go into that. But that's how we got those couples. They had to be couples, by the way, and they had to be staying together for the next 3 months and not doing IVF. Okay?
Okay.
So that was the setup. And then the company called Million Marker that you're going to send your P to, they have an education program. And that's a lot of what they do, the testing and the education. And so all of those couples, they talked to them and said, Tell me about what you put on your face this morning. Tell me what you washed your clothes with. Tell me what you clean your counters with, and on and on and on like that, right? So they took an inventory of what the couples were doing. And then they started this educational program, which they're very good at and been doing for a while. Once a week, they talk to them. So how's it going? Have you changed this? What are you using now? And so on. So it was not just a one-time thing. And if you were doing this, it would be short, just like use these things maybe. But along with that, we sent them the fellow kits to collect their semen. Okay, so we have beginning, middle, and end. It was 3 months, so beginning, 6 weeks, 12 weeks. And you know why 3 months?
Why?
It takes 70 days to make a sperm. So we wanted to have a turnover within the course of the intervention. Yeah. So